call to order. Wait. Before we take roll call, I just want to let people who's watching us know that Mr. Painter will be joining us virtually. The board voted on that per our policy to allow him to participate virtually for this evening.
Mr. Goodler.
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan.
Yes.
Mr. Bree.
Yes.
All present.
Now we have a moment of silence. Thank you. All right. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Your agenda information, any, Dr. Fox, any agenda changes or additions?
No, there are none tonight.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Chairman, I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. Painter?
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Goodler.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan.
Yes.
Mr. Bree.
Yes. Okay, the next item is the certification of closed session. Do I have a motion to certify for closed session?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to certify personnel's matters discussed in closed session, section 2.2-3711A1.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gubler.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Goodler.
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Bree.
Yes. Next on the agenda, citizen comments. And I understand we have no one in person, but we have, how many by?
3.
3 by submission.
Jessica Zodig, Luray, Virginia. I am in full support of a comment made at the last school board meeting where someone suggested carbon monoxide testing for students. I'm not alone in the worry that wearing masks is harmful. After all, throughout my pregnancy and at every doctor's appointment for at least a year after, I was showered with literature about SIDS and urged to make sure nothing is covering or even too close to my baby's face. 13 years later, I haven't forgotten it. I'd also like to point out that stretching and walking is exercise, especially when our kids are trying to catch their breath after running. They should not have to wear a mask. The VDOE says reasonable accommodations should be made for students who struggle to breathe in a mask. The face shields provided are no better. I implore you to use your talents to think of reasonable accommodations and present them. It's needed and necessary. I continue to ask for instruction to be outdoors as much as possible to limit mask wearing. Also, please limit use of Chromebooks. If we are using Chromebooks too much, we may as well be virtual, which has been deemed ineffective. Let's bring back projects and discussions. Putting assignments on computers isn't really easier because of all the remediation that will come later. I received a call about the moldy bread. Throwing out all the bread is extremely wasteful. My feeling it should be checked before it's served. Last year, my child had a full plastic bread bag tie in her sandwich. Her peers have also had plastic packaging in their food. I imagine the kitchen staff is stressed out. There's probably too few of them, so they feel rushed and they are low paid. Please go to the cafeteria staff and ask them anonymously for concerns and suggestions and help them. Follow their suggestions and school lunch will improve for all the students. In the case of future school closures, please have packets ready to go ahead of time so students have plenty of time to complete their work. These are trying times for everybody, but our focus should be on protecting these kids and making sure there's minimal effect on them. Thanks for all you've been doing. Remember how important each of you are. Jordan Coe, Shenandoah, Virginia. Good evening. It's been an extremely busy year so far with a lot going on all around. I'd like to bring to the board and district's attention that there are students who are being disserviced with the special education process. Some parents are pulling to homeschool. Others are working with the district, and still others don't know the basic information to have their children identified. I understand principals have a lot going on and know that as a rule, these teams try to work very hard and mean well within the constraints they have. I don't envy them one bit. While we are dealing with all the other professional development this year, I would encourage the district and board to spend some time on this facet of development as well. One thing needed is the SEAC committee and how parents can be involved. Thank you for your time. Jennifer Evans, Stanley. Good evening to each of you. My name is Jennifer Evans. My family and I live on Lucas Lane in Stanley, and I'm a previous employee of Page County Schools Food Service Department. It's been difficult for me to see and hear the criticism being directed towards the upper management of the Page County Schools Food Service Department. Presently, I am a food service employee within a neighboring county. You may be surprised to know that within the county I'm employed by, I'm seeing many of the same kind of issues being experienced within my county's food service department as within your food service department. There truly seems to be a shortage of employees, and even larger shortage of individuals available to be contacted when substitutes are needed. When a food service employee is off, then a regular staff must hustle extra hard to cover for the missing employee. Page County is just one of the counties experiencing what has been labeled a food shortage. It seems the food shortage is an unfortunate consequence of companies experiencing a shortage of employees and even at times a shortage of drivers to transport and deliver food products. Another similarity is the necessity of providing food substitutes when a previous ordered item is unavailable. Sometimes it's a wait and see type of thing when trying to figure out what a truck may or may not deliver. For example, chicken tenders seem to have become non-existent and substitutes are being required. To be honest, chicken in any edible form seems to be harder to locate than ever before. In the particular school I'm at, twice we were scheduled to serve a chef salad, and both times we were unable to get the turkey meat previously ordered. We ended up providing an extra serving of cheese in order to compensate for the absence of turkey. I wish to mention a situation I heard about concerning a Page County student being denied a milk. Based on my experience while working during the pandemic, when a student asks for just milk, the student is able to receive a milk as long as the student also receives an entire school lunch. The student is required to take even one bite of the school lunch, but in order for the school to be properly reimbursed financially, an entire meal must be given to the student. I realize this sounds wasteful, but may I also say due to state and federal government regulations, it seems they've made a career of creating much waste.
That completes them. Thank you, Dr. Painter. To the next item on the agenda is approval of the August minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from August 2021.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lansbury.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan.
Yes.
Mr. Breed.
Yes. We're on to the next item is approval. On the consent agenda, it's approval of personnel action. It's the only item on the consent agenda.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yeah.
We have to have a motion. Have a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda.
Chairman, I move that we approve the items on the consent agenda, personnel action.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Gubler, and I have a second by Mrs. Smoot. Sullivan Smoot. Never get the last names right.
Mr. Hooper.
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes. Just always thinking of someone's first name, not their last name. First item on the information items is fiscal year 23 budget update. Ms. Seacrest.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. This evening, I have for you the FY23 budget update to get us started in our budget season. We're just going to talk a little bit about our process first. October 4th, budget templates will be sent out to schools and departments. They are similar to the templates that they did see last year. These will be used to gather information from those stakeholders. They'll return those back to finance mid-October. And when I give those out to them, I email them to the principal, and then I usually end up going out to the school to have a meeting with the principal. Sometimes the vice principal will sit in as well. And then we also have meetings with the department heads up here on each one of their templates in case they have any questions or need clarification. Then when they come back, we compile that information, and I'll share that information with Dr. Fox. And then she'll begin to create her priority list for her needs for the budget for FY23. These next 3 slides are just the template that goes out. I wanted to share that with you all so that you all could see what our schools and departments are given. This is the first tab is just the instructions, and you can see that in the instructions they're asked to relate their their needs to our division goals. Those 4 division goals there. The allocations tab is tab number 2. Each one of these looks different because each school and each department has different budget lines, different money that's on those lines. However, each one is given the past 2 years of actual spending so that they can see on each line what they have spent. And then they're asked to make those requests in their FY23 column. And then they're also asked to tie those to our division goals as well. The 3rd tab of the template is additional requests. This is where a school or a department could ask for additional things such as more staff, a different program, maybe a piece of equipment, that sort of thing. Then they are also asked there if it's going to be a FTE. Is it 1? Are you asking for 1 teacher? Are you asking for 2? What is their estimated cost? A lot of times I have to help with that on some things. And then their justification, and then also relating that back to the division goals. It does ask there too if they think that there are any funds that they could potentially reallocate in their budget to that position if they felt that was necessary. The next slide is the budget season considerations. And these are just things that are going to be happening. So it is a long session of the General Assembly that convenes on January the 12th. And we were also hoping to this year have a school board and board of supervisors joint work session. And we're talking about maybe in January being able to do something like that if it's both of the board's pleasures. And then we also have our work sessions built in. There's a sample draft calendar in there for you all. It's very small, but I also gave you it on a whole sheet of paper. There are 4 built in before the superintendent's proposed budget goes to the board of supervisors, and then 1 after. Of course, those can be removed or added as needed.
Patty, before you move on, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On the possibility in January for the 2 boards to jointly meet,
Yes, sir.
is that before we even know what the superintendent's priority list and been presented to us? Or is it just to know, to fill them out?
There's no date set for that. And of course, again, that would be something that both of the boards would have to agree to do. So it could be before or it could be after, depending on. Our draft schedule right now is very much a draft because we don't have dates after January for your all's schedule that has to be voted on, as well as their schedule downtown.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, would this board get a chance to look at it prior to meeting with that board?
It would be your all's pleasure as to when we schedule the meeting.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Things that we're going to obviously be considering, there will be many more, but there will be changes in the VRS rates this year because it's the first year of the biennium budget. Our health insurance renewal, we usually don't get that until about February. So that is something we'll have to see if we stay the same or go up or down. ESSER funds and where we're at with that spending as well. If there's any new initiatives that come down from the General Assembly. And then always, of course, trying to remain competitive in regards to our salaries for our staff. The next slide is just a very small version of the draft calendar, and that is why you also have that draft calendar there for you all to see. As you can see, there are several TBAs that we will have to decide on probably after your January organizational meeting. That is the next step. So the budget templates will be going out October 4th. We're going to ask that they be back October 18th. Dr. Fox and the team will then take the month of November to really prioritize those and have meetings on that and see where our needs are. And then we will wait on the governor's proposed budget and VDOE update in December. And then again, once you all have your organizational meeting, we'll be able to give a much better calendar for budget season. If you all have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
I think it's going to be important to make sure the county knows that, you know, while we might use the ESSER funds as a budget driver, that's not money we get to count on forever.
Right. I think they're aware of that because they're also receiving similar funds.
I know, but you know
Yes.
how that works too.
Absolutely. And hopefully that's something we can discuss if we get to have a joint meeting with them. Yes, it's not going to be there forever. You're right.
You're right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next information item is instructional update. Mr. Jensen?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I passed out a sheet to kind of guide us in our discussion here this evening. Believe it or not, we're approximately 4.5 weeks through the school year at this point. We're getting ready to distribute progress reports next week. And so we wanted to come back to the school board and just talk a little bit about some of the things that we have going on in terms of how we've set up for this upcoming school year to address the learning loss or unfinished learning that we know is present with our students. The VDOE came out and kind of highlighted 3 different strategies or areas for us to consider. The first of which was re-engaging students to meet the social, emotional, and academic needs that are present. And here, you know, this is where they were talking about how are you going to, as a school division, support students coming back for in-person learning. The second strategy that they highlighted was supporting parents and caregivers in child's successes. And the third one was using high-quality assessments to support student learning. So the instructional team has sat down and we began to kind of brainstorm some of the strategies that we in Page County are planning to employ. I think it starts with just an overall getting back to what our classroom instruction is going to look like for all students, that Tier 1 instruction. And so we've put down a few things there that are going to kind of happen, some professional development that's going to occur. We have several new staff members we know this year, and new teachers. And so we've tried to outline for those individuals what the pacing guides look like and what are the resources that they can utilize to kind of match those pacing guides. So that's a resource for everyone to have available. We've begun to have grade level or department meetings, and there's, just for the school board's information, there's really 3 different types of meetings going on. There's meetings when we're discussing data related to student achievement and where those are at. There's instructional planning where teachers are sitting down and co-planning lessons together. And then there's just the general informational meetings that are that you probably remember that often occur in faculty meetings. At our last school board meeting, we talked a little bit about some of the changes that have happened to the master schedules this year to try and build in some time to address the learning loss. So we certainly wanted to put that down. We have begun and scheduled our special advisory recovery meetings. I know Mr. Breeden, when you came on board as the chairman of the school board, that was one of your initial requests. And so those meetings, I wanted to just highlight here this evening, those meetings have started. And the dates for those are actually on the last page or second page of the handout. So the high school meeting actually occurred today, and we've got a couple others coming up, one tomorrow, and then again on October 11th. So those groups have reconvened. If any of you have an interest in coming back and being part of any of those, we'd certainly welcome you. Dr. Fox joined the high school group today, and I think that went fairly well. Additionally, we are working with the Virginia Department of Education. We do know we have a couple of our schools in school improvement. And those school improvement meetings are really where we're looking at identifying evidence-based tools, strategies, interventions to support the unfinished learning. That's really been the highlight of that work. And then professional development. We know, if we can improve the instruction, the teaching and learning that's going on, that's going to be a major way forward in terms of addressing the unfinished learning or learning loss. I did give you a calendar of our first professional development day. I know when we develop the school calendar, there's always talks about what actually goes on these professional development days. So I did provide you a calendar on the last page of your packet, so you can kind of see the different sessions that we held and the different groups that were invited. I thought that might be good information for you as a school board going forward. If those days, just remember, are really an opportunity for our teachers to begin to learn the ins and outs of the different programs and things that we have purchased. And I think that time was well spent this past Monday. If you go back to those three different VDOE highlights, the third one is using high quality assessments to support student learning. At several of the different levels, I just made an overall list here of the data points that we are using. So you can get an idea of how we're kind of coming together and determining where students are at. And one of the things that I would highlight there is this year, the Virginia Department of Education mandated a student growth assessment. And so if you're following along here on the second page, we have a few notes down about those assessments that students were given this fall. We just finished here. I think we do have a few students that are hanging out there, but I would say at this point, the majority of that testing has occurred. These growth assessments are for students in grades 3 through 8, and they do address both English and math. This year, we will give a fall assessment, which we've done, and then we'll go ahead and give that again in the spring. Next year, in 22-23, there's actually 3 different assessments that are going to be given. There'll be a fall, mid, and spring assessment there. These tests are aligned to the standards of learning, and they are very similar to what students will encounter when they take the SOL. They're computer adaptive. So those types of questions are being asked. And really, they're exactly what we thought they were intended to do is the purpose, and that is to identify unfinished learning. At English, students can expect to have approximately 17 to 19 test items or questions to answer. And in mathematics, they have about 20 to 25 test items that they're answering. So certainly these assessments can be taken in one day. And they're not intended to give a overall pass-fail. Okay, that's not the purpose of these assessments. These are guiding data points for the classroom teacher. So we don't think about it in terms of an SOL test where 400 is a pass. That raw data, when we get that, we're working through that and learning a little bit about how teachers should interpret that data, but it's not really a pass-fail, meaning you have it or you don't have it. At any point, every teacher should be using that data to guide what they're doing with each individual student. So at the bottom there of your handout, we have given just a quick snapshot. We blurred out some things so we didn't give away any identifying data, but you get an idea of the student detail by question report. And so that's very similar to what teachers are going to see and how they can use that to address instruction, whether it's in a small group or whole group, from going forward. On page 3, there on the front, it's no secret what we're calling our remote instruction for some of the emergency closures that have had to occur because of COVID looks a little bit different this year. Last year, you probably remember, our teachers spent a lot of time recording videos and uploading those things to Schoology or sharing those through Class Dojo or different means. This year, we've taken a big step forward and we are providing live instruction when we've had to do that. And so far, the attendance has been very good for students coming online. I think teachers and our community have appreciated the fact that we've been able to offer live instruction when technically we've been shut down and gone away from some of that. We have been able to utilize Ms. Sullivan-Smoot's pointing at the Promethean panels. That's been a really powerful tool to be able to move forward in that regard. So I did just give you a few notes there about what those schedules look like. We've had to, shut down at 2 elementary schools for a few days. So if you think about it, the direct instruction occurs for 30 minutes. So there's a 30-minute block of ELA followed by a 20-minute activity. And then there's a small break that occurs, and then we move on to the next subject area. We have allocated time for lunch as part of these schedules. And then there's a time in the afternoon where students can come back on and kind of have an office hours time where teachers are available to answer questions and come back together and work individually with students. And that's been helpful as well. Very similar schedule for the middle school, a little bit longer class periods. Again, built in the afternoon office hours, and we received a nice compliment from a grandmother of her child, her grandson there at home, and she wanted to know, how in tune he was with what was going on, and we reached back out and said, thanks for sharing the picture. We'd like to make that part of our presentation, so we included that here this evening. So you get an idea of what it maybe looks like for the students. And then lastly there, I know I mentioned it earlier, we have, as mentioned, began to have those special advisory recovery meetings, and we're hoping that work will guide us as we move throughout the school year and plan for the summer. We know the summer programs were really beneficial to our students this past summer, and we're looking for that to happen as well this upcoming summer. Be happy to answer any questions anybody may have.
When are the special advisory committee meetings? Where are they at and what time?
We are meeting virtually, Mr. Breeden.
Okay.
Today's meeting was 3:30. 3:30 to 4 we met. So I'll go, if you're interested, I'll go ahead and get you on the guest list. Yep, we'll get you on again.
And the other question that I have is the data talks. When the grade levels and the schools are doing data talks,
Yep.
what data are they using?
Depending on the grade level, we've given you some of the different assessments that we have. So, whether you're a kindergarten student, then we're using, obviously your PALS data. We are giving the HMH reading inventory. That's the old Scholastic reading inventory. So we'll get a Lexile level. And then some other, we're using Lexia. So we're giving a diagnostic there. So we'll get a test score from there and Lexia or iReady for math. So we've got a compilation of different assessments that are being given. So when we come to talk about a different student, we're looking at several different data points.
And I see you have local assessments here too, but does each of them have a pre and a post so you know what grades
Yes, sir.
or where some concerns are?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And we did switch our software program for those assessments this year. We are using Mastery Connect. And if you're following along with your PD schedule, you saw we did some PD on how to be able to do some item writing so teachers could enter those test questions and have that part of the assessment thing.
Yeah, the board approved the purchase order for
Yep.
that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I know what you're noting here, I think, or what I think's coming up here. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. We bought another bank of questions to be able to add so teachers would have more additional questions to use to assess students.
In the test bank.
In the test bank, yes, sir. So we considered, what is it, the amount of time being spent that teachers would spend to write their own questions versus, okay, you can purchase a bank of 17,000 questions for this amount.
It's probably best.
Trying to take some burden off of our staff.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions?
I just want to say that I was totally relieved to see that the General Assembly came up with this growth assessment. I will tell my age here. Back when I was in the schoolhouse, we had assessments that measured their strengths and weaknesses, and then we built our learning process based on that. And then, of course, all these tests came along, the LPT, the SOLs and so forth, and we won't get into that, but regardless whether we were in school or out of school, this should be going on all the time. Because how do you know what they don't have or do have if you're not doing this? Common sense. So I was totally elated to see that somebody in Richmond finally realized, and it makes so much sense. So I'm glad, this is going to work. And I do like the idea of I'm assuming that all these topics took place countywide virtually.
Yes. Yep.
Again, you got great ideas in all these areas, and to be able to share and put together, that's just terrific. So,
If we had to come together in person, we selected large areas where folks could spread out.
Sure, absolutely. But it just makes sense because that sharing makes such a difference, and the kids are the ones that benefit. So thank you for creating all this.
Especially getting training on new software programs that we may have.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have any questions, comments? Thank you, Mr. Ritson. The next informational item is opening of schools update. Dr. Fox?
Yeah, good evening, board. I'm going to walk you through a presentation you've seen a couple times now. Probably next month, we're going to scale this back and change it a little bit. But just want to give you some updates on where we are in our community related to our health measures, and share a little bit more with you this evening about our testing program that we began referencing last board meeting. So the first chart is one you're becoming very familiar with. This is our daily case counts for the past 90 days. And what you'll see is that line is starting to come down. So there's some optimism there that we may have, we're not out of the woods yet, but we're at least moving in the right direction, is the words that the Lower Fairfax Health Department is using. So we're encouraged by that. These are the indicators that we've been showing you now again, and you'll see that we still are in the high for our total number of new cases. It has risen substantially for us here in Page County. And then you'll also see in terms of our percentage of positive PCR tests, we're still in the high range there. We have jumped considerably there. So I think while you're seeing that little bit of a decline across the state, I think we don't need to let our guard down yet. We're still in some of these areas. And then that leads us to, that those two indicators combined together give you your indicator for community transmission. And as a community, we're still in the high zone for Page County. When we look at our vaccination rates in terms of coverage there, you'll notice that we're trending again in the right direction. Those values are going up. They're just incremental, in smaller increments, not as high as we'd like to see, but we're at least moving in the right direction. So as a county, we currently now are at 48.5% of 18 and older fully vaccinated. In terms of our level of impact, this is our COVID dashboard. We showed you this last time. We're still updating that every day. And then what I wanted to show you tonight, if you'd move to the next slide, please. Again, I've shared this slide with you. This is how we are sort of, when we made the decisions to make the school closures, we're using this information to help guide us. While there aren't definitive numbers to move from low to medium to high, we're trying to make those numbers make sense for us as a division. So if you move to the next slide, please. What you see here is just sort of a visual of where we were and where we are now in terms of our school closures. So you'll see Luray Elementary is still closed. So we've left those values at high, but I will say I've put the medium in there because we're trending towards medium. It's getting better. We're optimistic that we will be able to reopen Luray Elementary School on Monday. And so you see for Shenandoah, they're back today. We've left them there because there's still some staff out, there's still some students out, but again, we're trending back in the right direction. And you'll see the same thing for Luray Middle in terms of they're back today as well. So they're moving from the medium to the low, and I anticipate that will be in the low range. We are keeping our eye on Page County Middle School in terms of some values there, and also Page County High School. You can't see it on this chart, but understaffed capacity, we do have them listed as a medium right now. have been pulling some people from other schools to help us, and I would like to take a moment to thank those staff members. Last week, some staff members from Shenandoah Elementary went over to Luray Middle to help with staffing. And yesterday, today, and likely tomorrow, some staff members from Luray Elementary have gone over to Page High School to assist. So we just want to say thank you to those staff members. We know that that's an unusual request, but at this point, it is helping us maintain and keep Page County High School open. So we're monitoring those staff numbers there, and I think we're going to be okay, but just wanted you to be aware that we did put them at the medium level.
Before you move on, can I ask a question about this? It's just striking because we have Springfield and Stanley and Luray High School and Page High School with low. Has anybody looked at what they're doing differently from the other schools that they are staying in the low and not coming medium or high? Are they doing anything differently, or?
I don't know that it can just be a sole judgment on what's being done in the school. I think it's just a composite of everything that's going on. I think the mitigation strategies that we have are the same
Okay.
in the schools. We're doing the same deep cleaning. I think it's just a matter of, everything now, the uncertainty of COVID, you're seeing values and outbreaks in different areas, and there's really nothing that can explain why those are happening. So I don't know that there's a correlation between those schools and the different things. We're working very hard to keep those mitigation strategies in play. And I think it's just something, I don't know that we'll be able to ever determine what's why for any of this.
I was just thinking that for what's up there, it's the ones that doesn't have or not new. But Stanley is in there as low. So I was thinking, well, the high schools, they got new ventilation because it's a new school. But Springfield Elementary is an old school and Stanley is an old school. So,
Well, I think wherever it starts, like let's say Luray Elementary, now you notice Luray Middle is starting to get it. Well, all their feeder schools it's going to trickle down.
Siblings.
If they go up, if
Yeah, that's
Page
right.
Middle gets in the high, then it's eventually going to get to the Stanley Elementary because they're all mixed together again because it's family members.
right. And especially as we go into winter with Thanksgiving and Christmas.
And you're seeing a little bit of a correlation between Shenandoah, Page Middle, and Page High there as well. So, we do know that when they're all on the buses together, but I think the strategies that we have in place are working when we do them right. And I think by trying to be proactive in terms of these closures, I know they were not ideal for anybody. And we certainly also want to thank our parents and our students for their flexibility because we know the challenges that come with a call coming in the afternoon to say you can't come to school tomorrow. But I think doing that is allowing us now to get back to levels where we feel more comfortable and we hopefully have mitigated that spread in those schools. And also, if I could, just a shout out to our teachers at those 3 schools for the work that they did to make that transition very quickly. We know that there's a lot going on for them right now, and we are grateful for the work that they did to move, within hours to be able to provide the level of instruction that was provided. So we're grateful to them and to our administrators and our counselors, all of the staff in those buildings who are providing support. We also were able to continue with our meal packages and food services. So thank you to those nutritional staff who were available to hand out during our pickup of materials. They were there passing out meal packages to any family that wanted it. So we're trying to keep all those services going for students and their families. And then just to give you a recap, just because I know, there's lots of emails going back and forth on who's closed and when, but this is just a recap of the 3 schools with Luray Elementary coming, they're still out through Friday. They'll be back on Monday. How many days each of those schools were out. And the asterisk is there because this past Monday was our staff development day. So that wasn't a student school day for us. It was a student holiday. And then I've been giving you this update. You'll see here, we've taken another dip and we're working through to figure that out. I still think we're in the midst of those fluctuations with our enrollment. So I'm not concerned yet. I am worried a little bit because 86 is a lot.
We got a week.
Yeah. So one of the things we are talking about in Region 4 is working with all of us together to send a letter to the governor and to the Virginia Department of Education requesting that they hold us harmless. It's the second year of the biennium, so the money is budgeted there just like they did last year, because we are seeing some withdrawals from school because of COVID, especially when we did the closures. Parents are becoming concerned and they want their children removed altogether. So I do think it's a fair request to ask that we potentially be held harmless again this year. They didn't mandate it like they did last year. They haven't said anything about it, but I think at least at a minimum, we make that request on behalf of our region, because we're not alone in seeing these decreases. And then I just wanted to give you an update on the VISTA testing program. We touched on this a little bit last week. We did have an informational meeting with the organization, so we have a little bit more information. It is a partnership between the VDOE and the Virginia Department of Health, where we can provide free COVID PCR testing to students and staff. It is a non-invasive nasal swab, and the results would be available within 24 hours. School divisions were strongly recommended by the VDOE to participate, but you have to opt in. So we have completed all of the paperwork and had our introductory meeting to be able to participate. What it provides for us is the testing vendors, the supplies, and the staffing that's needed to be able to do this testing. So it's a positive for us. It'll help us prevent the spread. We might be able to catch some students early so that we don't see the spread in the schools like we've potentially seen. It also does provide some grant funding for infrastructure. Say we wanted to have a drive-through testing screening, we could get some tents and things like that to have those sessions. I stressed this last meeting as well, and I'll stress it again, all of this testing is voluntary and requires consent, whether it's staff or students. So that parents need to know that. There are three main components of this testing system. One is just what they call a routine pool screening of testing, where you're utilizing a cohort. And so they're recommending it might be advantageous for you to use, say, for athletics, where you test a group of students. If anybody in that pool comes up positive, then everybody's retested, and you get the results back in 24 hours. They're going to be providing some at-home self-test kits that we can provide to families. And this would have been helpful, like last week when we were going through some of the things we were going through. If we could have sent home some tests, that would have been helpful. And then they also will support, say we have a big community event related to a school activity, we could do some testing prior to that to help facilitate a safer environment for everybody. In terms of our next steps, right now we've completed all of the initial paperwork to enroll in the program. VDH is procuring their vendors, and they're going to find a vendor that will match with us here in Page County. Once we do that, then we begin the next step of working through all the logistics of that. We are currently reviewing all of the programming that comes with it. There's a playbook that they've provided and a getting started checklist, so we're working through all of those details. And then we're also working on our communications plan in terms of how we share information with our faculty, our staff, our parents, and our students, to include providing the consent form that needs to be signed and would be on hand. So I'll continue to keep you updated. We don't really have an estimate of the timeline of when we can start. We're waiting on that information. I think it's all dependent on when they can secure the vendor, and then that vendor comes and meets with us. But I will continue to keep you updated on the timeline for that, but hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later for the testing. So that's my information this evening.
And I have a question of going back to your vaccine thing. I know it's been authorized to get the booster, and then part of that is part of teachers. So have we heard anything about the booster shots for teaching staff?
No, we haven't heard anything yet about that.
Well, I think that's a very important point. And the fact that I think they just recommended it for anybody 65 and over, and that might be at risk, the booster shot. But we also need to realize that, we started the year thinking we had a 95% immunity from the vaccine, which is proven to be not true now. That's what we're seeing. That's why we're asking for boosters. They're not recommended for everybody under 65.
Yeah, I think we'll just have to wait I know there are discussions in it. I think we have another call with the Department of Health. I believe it's Monday afternoon. I'll certainly ask for an update on that, but I haven't received anything since what we've heard publicly in the last week or two.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fox. The next item is an action item. It's claims for payment. Ms. Sechrist?
Yes, good evening again, board. You all have been provided with the claim certification where the operating fund was $285,225.25. Food service fund, $25,377.19. Total expenditures, $310,602.44. Along with that, you've been provided with the list of claims as well as the check register, and I will do my best to answer any questions you may have.
Ms. Sechrist, do you want to explain the 91,000 that's there?
For the CARES on the list of,
Mm-hmm.
so the CARES Act money there, the 91,068.98, that is made up of, on your check register, the two purchase orders that you all have previously approved or prior approved, the iReady, which is the curriculum associates for 64,512, that was iReady, and then you also had already approved the 22,000 for the Lexia learning systems. So those were,
So that's why that number's really.
that is why that number is so large, and you all had previously seen both of those POs.
But it's fine because you're going to get reimbursed, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you on that, Ms. Sechrist.
Yes, sir.
The next one is purchase orders over 10,000, Ms. Sechrist. Oh, yes, we got to get the approval, don't we? I'm just ready to move through. All right, do I have a motion to approve the claims for payment?
I make a motion to approve the claims for payment as presented.
Do I have a second? Mr. Gubler?
Mr. Lanford.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes. Now we'll move into purchase orders over 10,000 by Ms. Sechrist.
Yes, board, we have two purchase orders this evening for your approval. The first one is for a Switch Network Access Point wireless access point, and that is using the technology E-Rate wireless project. And then webcams, there, I do have an update on that. That listed on your packet says 30,000. They were able to talk with the company and actually got a lower quote for $29,700. And that would be using ESSER funds as well.
And the PO is actually reflective of the 29.7.
It will be, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the purchase orders over $10,000 as modified by Ms. Sechrist.
Thank you. Do I have a second? I have a second by Mr. Lansberry.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mr. Lanford.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yeah. Okay. We're moving on to the Resolution American Rescue Plan, ESSER 3 grant funding. Ms. Sechrist.
Yes. Board, I have a resolution for you all this evening. It is rather lengthy, so bear with me as I read this. Resolution to the Page County Board of Supervisors requesting adjustment of the 2021-2022 school budget for ESSER 3 funding. Whereas the American Rescue Plan Act was authorized in March 2021, and whereas the ARP Act and elementary and secondary school emergency relief ESSER 3 funds are emergency relief funds intended to address the impact that COVID-19 has had and continues to have on the elementary and secondary schools in Virginia. And whereas Page County Public Schools has been notified of ARP Act and ESSER 3 funds allocated in the amount of $6,314,510.99, of which $4,209,673.99 is available for use on a reimbursement basis. And whereas these additional federal ARP Act and ESSER 3 funds will be used to support programs and activities consistent with the following allowable uses. Not less than 20% of each division's formula funds must be reserved to address learning loss through the implementation of evidence-based interventions such as summer learning or summer enrichment, extended day, comprehensive after-school programs, or extended school year programs, ensuring that such interventions respond to students' academic, social, and emotional needs and addresses the disproportionate impact of the coronavirus on the student subgroup described in section 1111B2B of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. Students experiencing homelessness, and children and youth in foster care. Activities authorized by the Elementary and Secondary Education Act and the Individuals with Disabilities Act and the Adult Education and Family Literacy Act and the Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Act. Coordination of the LEA preparedness and response efforts to improve coordinated response with other agencies to prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus. Providing principals and other school leaders with the resources necessary to address school needs. Activities to address the unique needs of low-income children or students, children with disabilities, English learners, racial and ethnic minorities, students experiencing homelessness, and foster care youth, including how outreach and service delivery will meet the needs of each population. Developing and implementing procedures and systems to improve LEA preparedness and response efforts. Training and professional development for LEA staff on sanitation and minimizing the spread of infectious disease. Purchasing supplies to sanitize and clean LEA facilities. Planning for and coordinating during long closures, including providing meals to eligible students, providing technology for online learning to all students, providing guidance on IDA requirements, and ensuring other educational services can continue to be provided consistent with all applicable requirements. Purchasing educational technology, including hardware, software, and connectivity for students served by the LEA that aids in regular and substantive educational interactions between students and their classroom teachers, including low-income students and children with disabilities, which may include assistive technology or adaptive equipment. Providing mental health services and supports, including through the implementation of evidence-based full-service community schools. Planning and implementing activities related to summer learning and supplemental after-school programs, including providing classroom instruction or online learning during the summer months and addressing the need of low-income students, children with disabilities, English learners, migrant students, students experiencing homelessness, and children in foster care. Addressing learning loss among students, including low-income students, children with disabilities, English learners, racial and ethnic minorities, students experiencing homelessness, and children and youth in foster care of the local educational agency, including by administering and using high-quality assessments that are valid and reliable to accurately assess students' academic process and assist educators in meeting students' academic needs, including through differentiated instruction. Implementing evidence-based activities to meet the comprehensive needs of students. Providing information and assistance to parents and families on how they can effectively support students, including in a distance learning environment. Tracking students' attendance and improving students' engagement in distance education. Student facility repairs and improvements to enable operations of students to reduce the risk of virus transmission and exposure to environmental health hazards and to support student health needs. Inspection, testing, maintenance, repair, replacement, and upgrade projects to improve the indoor air quality in schools, school facilities, including mechanical and non-mechanical heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, filtering, purification, and other air cleaning, fans, control systems, window and door repair and replacement, and other activities that are necessary to maintain operations and continuity of services and continuing to employ existing staff. Whew. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Page County School Board, in order to respond to the impact of COVID-19 on school operations, students, and staff, respectfully request the Page County Board of Supervisors to appropriate the additional federal funds of $4,209,673 with no increase or decrease in the local appropriation involved to the 2021-2022 school operating budget as follows. You can see there in the below table how that has been appropriated request amongst our different functions. This is to certify that the foregoing resolution was authorized by the Page County School Board in the regular session on Thursday, September 23rd, 2021. And if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so I had to go back. I found the draft finally on our Page County School Board thing and how we plan to use it, the ESSER 3 funds, because I couldn't remember because it's been a while. First of all, has our application been approved?
Not yet. We have to make a couple of minor revisions to it, but we're working on it.
Okay. Well, my question with that is, I'm assuming the resolution thing is because we need that local match. Is it because you want a local match on the?
No, so we have to ask the county to appropriate the money into our budget. ESSER 3 was not appropriated into the FY22 budget. ESSER 2 money is in our FY22 budget. However, the ESSER 3 money was not appropriated into that budget.
Okay, but you could spend it from way back up to now and get reimbursed.
Right, so we were finishing up the budget process when our total amount was given to us. So we didn't, and at that time, we were asked
So
not
you
to.
kind of need to borrow it to use it. Is that what you're saying?
So it's not really borrowing it. They have to appropriate it to us. They are in charge of saying, basically, yes, then this is where you can put this money at.
So the money's there. We just need it now added into our budget so that we can then spend
Use
it.
it and then
Right.
We're
reimburse.
doing it now because we're ready to move on some of these. So as soon as the application's approved, as soon as this is approved, we can move forward because the main thing we want to start work on is the HVAC.
Well, speaking of the HVAC stuff, that's why I looked up something. I knew it because we've been doing it at work. That CSLFRF, what does that stand for? Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds to support ventilation replacement improvement projects. With that application's not out yet, but it's only for HVAC stuff, basic or building stuff. But you have to have a local match.
I believe that's correct, and
I looked it up. Page is eligible for $628,066. Do we know how we would spend that if we, for HVAC stuff or building?
it would go into the same processes that we are doing here for ESSER 3, and then what we would do is take that ESSER 3 money and reallocate it to some other needs across the division. And we have the ability and the flexibility to do that with the ESSER 3 application. We can just submit some amendments to move that money from object code to object code.
But do we know that do we think we'd have the support to get a local match for over $600,000?
I don't know the answer
Because
to
it
that.
requires a local match for that and we could get some free stuff done.
We
basically.
potentially could look at, we do still have our CIP where we spent a portion of that money that was allocated to us on paving. So that we could potentially look at that as a source.
Okay. Yeah, the application's not out yet, but it was August 30th.
Yeah.
Superintendent's email.
Thank you.
Going back to Dr. Painter, this is just the budgetary process that it has to go through. It's like they appropriate all money, no matter where it comes from, they appropriate all money. So that's why. You'd think if it's coming from federal government, the local government wouldn't have to appropriate it, but they do.
Okay. We didn't follow the same process.
That's interesting, though.
I think we have a larger pot.
Oh, okay. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I make a motion to approve the RFSR 3 grant funding resolution as read by Ms. Sechrist.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mrs. Smoot.
Dr. Painter,
Yes.
Mr. Gabriel,
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster,
Yes.
Mr. Painter,
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Breeden.
Yeah. Thank you. We're now into board members' discussion time.
I'd just like to say thanks to Dr. Fox and all your team players here at the central office, because I know you all have chipped in and been out to schools, helping out when principals are out and anyone else for that matter. And a definite thanks to all the administrators, teachers, aides, everybody that works in the system for working through these hoops that come and will continue to come, but what you all do on a daily basis makes it possible to make it a productive day. And just thank you for everything.
I'd like to thank or give props, I guess, to the athletic director at Page County High School. I think he's been gung-ho on everything, including the field dedication. I was excited to go tomorrow night, but then they rescheduled it. But I was glad that since it's homecoming week, they were still able to give something to the kids by having their powder puff game and their bonfires and tailgating still. So I look forward to the October game now. Something though that I wanted to talk about with you all, because a parent had emailed about it, and then it made me go back and reread our policy. But back on August 12th, we voted on our public participation policy in regards to the public comments. It was policy BDDH-R.
Yes.
And when I read it, there is nowhere in there that says if they submit written comments that we're going to read them aloud. All of them, the only thing about written comments says if they want to present written comments, 8 copies should be provided. And everything talks about signing up to speak and that they have to speak at the podium and things like that. Nowhere in there does it say that if they submit online comments that we read them aloud. And as a school board member, we're supposed to follow policy. So I'm going to refrain from reading public comments anymore. If they're submitted, I would love to read them myself, but not aloud if we're going to follow policy that we voted on. I don't know what you all think about that. I mean, we are supposed to follow policy, correct?
Yes.
I think it's important to read those comments. So could we submit a new motion at some point?
Yes, we can bring that regulation back. The superintendent can bring that regulation back with that wording in it if the board so chooses to wish. I do believe we did vote on still allowing virtual meetings and public comment through the online forum.
Could they sign up virtually to
They
speak?
could.
I mean, I don't know of a neighboring division of anybody that they're allowed to just send in things and we read them aloud. I think it brings more purpose to it to hear the actual person and what feeling they had behind it rather than listen to my monotone voice read it. And I don't want to put it on Linda, the clerk, to have to read them all either, because, I mean, some people don't even like to read out loud. And sometimes it is a lot. And I think it's easier to just send something in and then you can't retract it. And because I know of some people too that they sent something in and then they didn't know how to get it back. So I've read policy and it's not in there that we're going to read them aloud. It all talks about the speaker speaking at the podium.
I would interject that if at any point someone has submitted a comment and they would like to pull it back, they just need to call us
Okay.
and we can have that conversation, because until it's read in the record, it's not a part of the minutes. So if anybody has that concern in the future until we settle whatever direction we're going to go, I would just encourage them to call us at the central office and we'll work with them to remove it if that's their wish.
Yeah, because sometimes people react and send something in and then they get some kind of communication and then it's like, oh, snap. And, or, you have regrets later that you typed what you did.
We would probably just ask them to submit something in writing to us that they're requesting to have it removed so that it's documented of that prior to the meeting on Thursday night.
Dr. Painter, I see your point, and if that's standard practice for the most part, then I would be in agreement.
Well, before COVID, at a meeting, you signed up to speak. That was, and we had 2 times during a meeting that it was open to the public to speak. COVID came, obviously, you couldn't be here, so that's why we started it. Now we're even reaching out and going to Luray High School, Page County High School, that, we're making an effort that it's in the proximity of the schools that they attend, that they could attend that meeting. And I realize there might be some who can't get there, but at the same time, once you start it, then when do you?
Or, I mean, they could do it. I mean, Dwayne's sitting right here.
Right.
And I mean, whether you're at work or anything, you could still sign up and
Right. And
log on
that
and
would be
talk.
fine. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, the emails, there are other ways, and
Mhm.
I think it's important too to see the individual if at all possible.
So it sounds like the board's pleasure just to bring that back. Either change it in the resolution that we do it, or as an action item that we no longer do the online comment reading.
Well, the online comment reading's not even in there, is my
Right.
point. So if we're gonna follow policy, we don't read them aloud.
Right.
But if we want to, we'd have to,
Change it.
Bring
Put
it
that in
back.
policy.
I think you already know how I feel.
I think Ms. Smoot makes a good point too, because we made those accommodations during COVID, and now we're in this sort of weird place post-COVID, which is not completely normal yet. We're still wearing masks, and we're still trying to socially distance. So there's that piece too. So,
Any other comments, questions? I have 2 things. One, and just for clarification, because it was in a parent's comment that Dr. Painter read, are they wearing masks even outside during PE?
They should be.
They should not be.
Now, unless they're choosing to, students may opt to wear it, but once we're outside, now we are asking that as the students move through the building till they get outside,
That they have.
that they have them on, and then once they're outside and participating in whatever activity, whether it's PE or recess, they can remove their masks.
What about outside instruction? Are they required to wear them outside?
I think it
instruction?
depends on how we have them seated. If we can space them out far enough away from each other, they don't need to wear their mask, but if they're congregated in a group around each other, then we're going to continue to wear the mask based on the CDC recommendation.
Okay. Is that communicated out to the buildings?
Yes, I believe we've made that pretty clear. We can re-communicate that
Okay.
if
All right.
need be.
Well, that sort of goes to that parents thing. It's the schools know, the schools do it. If the children choose to wear them, they choose to wear them if they're outside, but it's not a requirement. Okay, that's correct. The other thing that I want to sort of piggyback off from Mrs. Smoot is I just want to thank the entire school division staff for everything that they have done for the last year and a half and what they continue to do on behalf for the students. That's showing up every day, that's doing the lesson plans multiple ways, preparing lessons different ways for either virtual or in person. That's the bus drivers who are taking extra care of their buses to make sure all of those are clean and sanitized for our students. That's for the school nutritions specialists who are out in the schools who are preparing the meals and diligently getting our students fed. So I just want to thank everyone and let you know that the board does thank you and appreciate what you do for us and for the students every day. We may not say it, but please know that at least for me, I speak for me, that I greatly appreciate everything that you do for the students in Page County.
And you missed the instructional assistant.
Well, I started off with every division staff member. I didn't
And
want to
office
miss any.
staff
So it's from the superintendent all the way down.
and the
So-
custodians.
Yes, all of those subgroups. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Anyone else?
Make a motion that we adjourn?
Second?
I have a motion and a second to adjourn.
Mr. Goody,
yes.
Mr. Lansbury,
Yes.
Mr. Planner,
Yes.
Dr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan?
Yes.
Yes. Adjourn.